In this lesson, you will describe the shape of the distribution and use the shapes of distributions to select appropriate statistics. So first of all, what is a distribution? It is a graph or table that shows the theoretical frequency of each possible data value. So the two types of graphs we're going to use today is a histogram and a box and whisker plot. And you should be somewhat familiar with both of those. A negatively skewed distribution is when the majority of data are on the right. So here's a picture of a negatively skewed distribution. Here's your histogram, and you see that the towers where most of the data is gathered on the right. So we call that negatively skewed because it has a sweep up to the right. Symmetric distribution is where the data is evenly distributed, so it almost looks like it is symmetrical, that you could have a line of symmetry right here. It does look like it's in an upside down U shape, where you have data majority in the center. And then a positively skewed distribution is where the majority of data are on the left. So you have most of the data first, and then it has the tail at the end. So you can think about a way to remember this. You can think negatively when you have to wait a long time to get to all the data, and it's positive because you get all the data first. Think of a way to remember that, because negatively is where you have most of the data at the end, and positive is where you have most of the data at the beginning. So in example 1, we're going to use a graphing calculator, the TI-84, to construct a histogram for the data, and then we're going to describe the shape of its distribution. And so you would go ahead and on your calculator hit Stat and do your edit list, and you would type all of these values into your L1. And I have done that already. So then what you will do next is you will hit Second Stat Plot, and I'll have this for you in your notes as well. But when you hit second, and it's actually y equals, above the y equals it says Stat Plot. When you hit second y equals, you will have to turn the first plot on, and you will actually select on to turn it on, and then the histogram is the one that's third over. And so I'll let you see the screen. This is the histogram here, the third one over. And so when you hit enter, when you graph, you want to click on graph, it'll graph the histogram for you. The zoom you can use to do a zoom stat where it will zoom in on it, and so you'll have the right window for your graph. So let's describe this data. Can you see how the majority of the data is at the beginning? So we're going to call this a positively skewed because I have most of the data at the beginning and it has the tail off to the right. So you try the example in your notes. A box and whisker plot, if you'll remember these, we call a box and whisker plot negatively skewed if you have most of the data over on the right, your box is farther to the right. Symmetric would be obviously a box in the center, and then you're positively skewed, your box is further to the left. So example 2, what you need to do is you need to input the data into your, we're going to hit Stat and Edit, and you're going to input the data into your L1. And then what you're going to do this time is you're going to hit your second y equals, which is your stat plot. And what you're going to do is turn that plot on, and then you're going to select this time the one that is in the second row, far left. We call that the box and whisker plot. So when you select that, and it's going to be of your L1 data, when you hit graph, it will give you the box and whisker plot. And you can do the zoom 9, which would make your window set to show all that data. So what we would say here is, just looking at that box and whisker plot, does that look somewhat symmetrical? We do have this outlier off to the right here, but we know that this data right here, the box is in the center, so we would say that data is somewhat symmetrical. So you try the example in your notes. Now, the mean and median describe the center of the data. So standard deviation and quartiles describe the spread of the data. So if it's symmetric, we're just going to find the mean and the median. If it is skewed, the center is not reliable, so you'll have to find what we call a 5-number summary. And the 5-number summary is where you would find the standard deviation as well as the quartiles. You'd find all of that information. So what we're going to do is I'm going to talk you through on the notes of how you would find that data. I'm going to show you a quick example of what I'm talking about. I input some data for your example 3. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a histogram of that data. So I do my plot and I do my histogram, and what I'm going to show you is this histogram right here. Looks like it is somewhat skewed, as we have most of our data here at the beginning, so we call that a positive skewed. So if you remember how we show our statistics, you're going to hit Stat, and you're going to scroll over to Calc, and we're going to do statistics of 1, and on this particular calculator I would click on Calculate, and then I have this information here. I have my mean, I have my standard deviation, and then I will tell you what those other numbers mean in your notes so that you can describe your data. So you try the example in your notes. I'll give you enough information to walk you through. Remember, if you ever have any questions, just let me know.